The following is a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about them Cowboys?
Go Cowboys! This is Girls Talk, Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw Dating, preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys, and broadcasting live from Dallas Cowboys World Headquarters at the Star.
Welcome into another Thursday off-season edition of Girls Talk, Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw Dating. As you'll see, it's just me and Aisha here in the studio. Jess is dealing with some car issues. She's back home with her family, so we want to make sure that she gets back safe and sound. That means you're stuck with me and Aisha for the next 45 minutes. This is exciting, though, Aisha, because I feel like the draft has kind of been like this thing that we have been counting down to for so many weeks at this point. And now it's weird to think about, like, this is the week before the week. You know what I mean? Like,
it's great when you put it like that.
Yeah, I guess it's technically the week before the week. But you get my point. The point is we're closing in closer. We've spent a lot of time on this show and on pretty much every other outlet here at DallasCowboys.com. Just kind of talking about the draft class and who would be a good fit for this organization. But something I want to talk about this morning is how the guys who already have that Cowboys jersey, how they are doing this offseason. It's been so fun just to see them, out working. We walk past the field outside when we go to our desks, and you can see, the guys out there working hard. But the biggest thing is the Dak yard. The Dak yard has become this sacred place for the Cowboys to get out there and train. Basically what that is just Dak's backyard. He's got a field set up out there, and all of the guys have been working out, running routes, catching passes, all of that stuff. But it's exciting to see these guys really locked in the offseason.
Yeah. So the NFL doesn't designate any, together workouts. I call them together workouts. Together workouts during this point in the season. So for when you look at the example that the Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott sets, like the fact that he got a 50-yard, field installed in his backyard just so those guys can come back there and get work. Also, we've seen guys from some other organizations working with them, and that I think that's dope as well. Just players feeling like they have somewhat of a safe place to come, and the fact that your franchise QB is the one providing it. They've been working hard. You also see guys training with their specialized trainers. Micah Parsons working out with his specialized trainer. I saw Jonathan Hankins getting worked into. Big Hank.
You see him? You know what? And here's the thing about Hankins. I felt so bad because I reposted that video on Twitter of him working out. And, I was impressed by it because, I recognize that it's hard just in general to do some of those lateral movements and cut and be explosive. And then you're carrying 300 plus pounds trying to do that. I felt bad because so many people under the comments were like, oh, like my 7-year-old can work faster than that. Or, oh, like I can move faster. And it's like, okay,
do you know what he does?
Like, we'll get Jerry out here. We'll bring you on. Like, talking mess about our big men working hard.
But no, yeah, like to your point though, it is always good to see that the gentlemen that play for the organization you work for, they're continuing to work, they're trying to get better. Also too, I think this is a Mike McCarthy kind of thing too. Like I feel like it's been off seasons have been a little bit more quiet since he's been around, and I like that.
Yeah, I think so too. It's weird because you go from hearing from Mike McCarthy 4 times a week to hearing to him maybe 4 times in the last 3 months, you know what I mean? So it's definitely been strange not to hear from that, not really to have a sense of routine. That's definitely been a transition. But the biggest thing that I always look forward to in the offseason is just seeing which one of the guys are going to be about it, not just talk about it, because there's always talk about like, oh, we're going to get this working in the offseason. But like, come OTAs, we're going to see who got that work in the offseason, you know what I mean? And one of my favorite guys, actually, who has really surprised me is CeeDee Lamb. He's been all over the place. At one point, he was down in South Florida working out with Jerry Jeudy, some work in with Tua's trainer as well, Nick Hicks. But yeah, he has just been everywhere, and you can already kind of see how he is developing his game even more. You can see that he's working on being a little bit more speedy. He's working on being a little bit more shifty on some of those route running and all of that. So it's been really good to see CeeDee Lamb, because obviously the big conversation last year was the wide receiver room was kind of meh. So it's nice to see that, he's taking that initiative as wide receiver one. What is that face?
I'm sorry, that meh. It made me think about Amanda Bynes. And I was like, my bad. I was not trying to enter. But no, you're right. And with CeeDee Lamb, like, you can see him ascending and the maturity. And, like, even in his post, I mean, he's very cryptic, but even in his Instagram post, he's just like, solo, just doing things dolo. And I'm just like, whatever he has to do to get himself in that mind state of like, I'm the number one, I'm the guy, it's necessary. But then also too, Jake Ferguson, also seeing Simi Fehoko out there working.
Right, a name that you forget about because he missed all of the season.
Absolutely. There's some gentlemen that kind of got, I mean, with Jake Ferguson especially, he's, baby, that's tight end one. That's tight end one right now.
2-1.
Like, sophomore year, you can't have a sophomore slump. You have to, he has to take that next step as well. So it's also cool seeing those gentlemen getting some work in. Like, hey, they know that they have to take on some different levels of responsibility, gonna be on the field more, trying to connect with Dak more during this time. I like seeing the offensive line. I really like seeing the offensive linemen work with Duke and stuff, though. That's my jam. That's my jam, because offensive linemen, the more that I learn about them in the position from high school to college to NFL, they really, if they want to get better, they have to do the work themselves. They don't have all these special, people helping them out all the time during practice. They don't get I feel like offensive linemen get kind of mistreated out here. I ain't gonna lie to y'all. Yeah. So to have someone like a Duke Manyweather in the DFW area to be able, it is really, to me, it's a luxury for a lot of these players to continue to get that coaching. That it's one thing to work individually, but to have someone that can coach you, that you respect, that's here. I think I love seeing those guys because we've seen them get better. Tyler Biotish, Terrence Steele, we've seen them get better working with their specialized gurus in this area. So yeah,
I agree. I think too, it's so, especially when you point out offensive line. These are, Zach Martin put it perfectly. He was a presenter for the Jason Witten College Man of the Year award it was about a month or so ago. Gosh, time flies. But one of the offensive linemen who was a finalist is Alex Forsyth, the center out of Oregon, and Zach Martin was basically the guy who introduced Forsyth onto the stage. And one of the things he said in his speech was, it can be really frustrating to be an offensive lineman sometimes because you rarely touch the ball. Like, I mean, unless you're the center, you're the one that's hiking, and that's pretty much it. But you're rarely touching the ball. You're rarely, involved in, I don't want to say involved in the play because you're not, but you're not the one that the spotlight is on when, Tony Pollard is breaking away for a 20-yard carry, or when a block has opened and now all of a sudden your receiver has a little bit more space, or your quarterback can manipulate a little bit better. So it was interesting that he said, we're oftentimes the ones who, we don't touch the ball, but we're the hardest working ones on the field. So I love that you pointed that out. And going back to Jake as well, we had this conversation. We are taping Building the Board, which is actually airing later today. So be sure to tune into that fun series with me and Patrick and Kyle. But one of the things we discussed yesterday was the tight ends. And, when you look at the position that the Cowboys are in right now, losing Dalton Schultz, I think, is going to be the least impactful loss. I mean, I know that he was Dak's, kind of go-to guy. But when you have a Jake Ferguson that was so involved already in the offense last year, and it almost felt like he was priming for this position anyways. I think that it is really special that you pointed out that not only is Jake working, but he's out working with QB1. He's out there making those connections. Peyton as well. I've seen them out on the field too. So I think it's just important in places where there have been some loss. It's nice to see that, some of these younger guys, especially going into that second year, they're already trying to avoid that sophomore slump.
Yeah, I don't want to forget that Ezekiel Elliott was out there working as well. And I think it also, too, just continues to speak to what we talk about all the time. It's just how bonded this locker room is, and that continues. That continues in football. Like, that continues in sports. Like, people don't just be like, oh, well, bye. Bye. It was nice knowing you. No, like they're still continuing to work together, and I felt like it did my heart some good. I know maybe not everybody else, but it did my heart some good.
Yeah.
Oh, look at him.
The gang's all out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's tough, but I am excited to see from a running back position what this team is going to kind of develop into. You know, I don't know a ton about Ronald Jones. I know that he's spent the last couple of seasons back and forth through injuries, but he has potential to be, you know, a big name guy if put in the right situation. And I'm hoping that this will be the right situation. But I think that's an area really where the draft is going to come into handy, especially when you have so many talented guys at the running back position. I was cracking up while you were talking earlier because I have our stream up, and one of the comments, we were talking about Jonathan Hankins, one of the comments says, I want to see Hankins working out with a knife and a fork. We need that immovable Coke machine in the middle.
Leave him alone.
And this is what I'm talking about, guys. Like,
speaking of, he has a cookie. He has a
I'm glad you brought that up because I want to talk about that because I think it's so fun. I'll let you explain it, but I do think it's so fun just to see these guys outside of football and kind of get to know them a little bit better. But you explain that video.
Yeah, YouTube be suggesting stuff, and they was like, "Hey, look, football guy," and Jonathan Hankins and his lovely wife and daughter. It looks like they have a YouTube vlog type thing, and they cook. He does a lot of watching. But they cook as a family. They cook as a family, and I know for me, like as someone that has to analyze these gentlemen, it's really dope to get to see them, like we were talking about, to see the other side of them, and also just be respectful of their family, just and how important the off season is for them to regroup and be with their families. But that was just really dope to see. I was like, oh, look at him attempting to cook.
It's fun too with Hankins because obviously, you know, we acquired him at the trade deadline, so he didn't really have the opportunity through the first half of the season to really get to know who he was other than, you know, his stats. And then even in the locker room, he was just so very quiet, so to himself. Not to say that that's a bad thing, but it's fun to see, especially with those types of guys. It's fun to see a little bit more of their personality and, you know, how they interact with their families. It's a really fun opportunity just to get to know them better. Last thing I want to talk about before we take our first break. We were talking about, you know, some of the sophomore slumps and making sure that these guys stay active and stay locked in. And we can get into this a little bit more in our next block. But just looking at some of these guys going into that second year, Mike McCarthy always talks about the importance of the jump from year one to year two. From your perspective, Aisha, who are some guys that you are really kind of not only hoping but expecting to make that year one to year two leap?
I mean, I think the easy answer is DaRon Bland for me. I am so excited to see his development with this coaching staff. Had the pleasure of hearing him on ADZ Sports in Dallas with Skywalker Steele. Shout out to you, hearing him on there. He had a small interview, and we haven't gotten to hear from these guys in the off season. So just to hear him kind of talk about getting his body right, adjusting, and he sounds happy and lively. But he also spoke about just his come to Jesus moment in football, and just we can talk about that later. But I just wanted to. He's one of the guys I'm really looking at taking the next step because he came in and showed so much promise unexpectedly early on. So for him in this secondary and what he does as the nickel, or what he could be doing as the nickel, I think his promise and his upside is someone I'm really looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, DaRon Bland was the last player that I spoke to whenever they were cleaning out their lockers so many months ago. And it was so fun to see his transition from the first time I ever spoke to him, which was the game where Mike was like, hey, Jordan's out, you're in. And so finding out that he was going in, and I spoke to him literally right after that game, and you could feel how nervous he was, you know, like, yeah, well, it was a shock, but I just had to go in there and do my best. And then, you know, talking to him at the end of the year and just not only seeing the confidence that he had on the field, but hearing it. It's so important when you can recognize that these guys, you know, they're not only telling you that they're taking that step, but they're going to, you know, they're showing you as well. So we love DaRon Bland. We are so excited to see him develop. But I want to continue this conversation because there's a few guys going into that second year season. I don't know why my brain stalled there, but going into the second year season, just looking at their potential and, you know, what that kind of means for the draft. So we'll go ahead and take our first break here on Girls Talk Boys Talk. Before we do, though, we are going to try something so different on this podcast. We are going to try to take some calls later in the show. I will get you that phone number when we get back on Girls Talk Boys Talk. But if you have a question, a comment, just want to chat with Aisha and I, give us a call. I'll have that number after the break here on Girls Talk Boys Talk.
At Jigsaw Dating, we obviously want the Cowboys to bring that 6th ring home. But to be honest, we're more focused on finding the person who will put a ring on your finger. That's why we created a dating app that reveals your face through meaningful conversation, so you can date deeper. Because it's personality that matters the most, not looks. Join Jigsaw Dating today, dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
All right, Pepsi-loving football fans, it's time we had a lesson in trash talk. And I'm not talking about that stuff that happens on the field. What I'm talking about is trash, and it's the only thing that belongs in your garbage can. Now, recycling might not be as thrilling as converting a 4th and long, but next time you're thinking about throwing that Pepsi Zero Sugar bottle away, just cap it back up and pretend you're down by 6 with the recycling bin wide open. Know the difference? Make a difference. Be a team player and recycle. Visit PepsiTrashTalk.com to learn more.
I'm Dak Prescott, quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys.
And they snap it to Prescott, who looks right. It's not there. He escapes left. He'll run for a first down.
Just like football, when it comes to crypto, it's important to have a team you can trust. With blockchain.com, I know I'm in good hands. Since 2011, they've been trusted by millions around the world to buy, sell, and trade cryptocurrency.
Prescott's going to run this himself. Run it up the middle, and he scores.
Whether you're new to crypto or an active trader, they've got you covered. What are you waiting for? Get started at blockchain.com.
Welcome back to Girls Talk Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw, the preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys. Come out to the Star in Frisco for Dallas Cowboys Draft Weekend, presented by Miller Lite. The party starts on Thursday, April 27th at 6:30 p.m. You can enjoy draft coverage, player appearances, live performances, and more. On Friday, come back for Draft Night Out with live music and games. Then finish strong on Saturday with the Draft Day 5K, presented by Baylor Scott and White Health. For more details, visit DallasCowboys.com/draft. These reads are always so funny to me because the way I read them is so different from how I talk. And people always ask me, because my background obviously is in local news, and people are always like, oh, do the local news voice thing.
No.
And I just realized like how
voice?
how different it is. Oh, I promise I'm regular. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about some of these sophomores coming into their second season of the NFL. Obviously, we were so impressed with the draft class last year. We left off Block 1, Aisha, talking about Deron Bland and the jump that, he had to make pretty early. I obviously have high expectations for him as well going into this season, especially with the cornerback situation still kind of a question mark. We brought in Stephon Gilmore, which I think will be a huge help, but there's still some holes there that I would like to address. But let's talk about some of these other guys going into that sophomore season. Who's someone else you think we should be paying attention to?
Well, of course, I would also say Tyler Smith. So much discussion about what's happening with this offensive line and what could be happening moving forward. It seems like there may be a little depth there at tackle, but there may not be none at guard right now. So and with him showing flex, last year there's a lot of questions about what's going to happen moving forward with this offensive line and Terrence Steele, but then also just with the development of his play. I mean, he came out and really wowed a lot of people with his flexibility, with his ability, what he was able to do in the run game. Looking for him. He's very vocal. One thing about Tyler is that he's not afraid to say the hard part out loud. Yeah. He's not afraid to say, my feet could be better. My hands could have been better today.
I love how you expressed it as well, because that's exactly how he is. Yeah, I love how nonchalant isn't the right word, but I'm going to use it for lack of better terms because it's so matter of fact the way he is so critical on himself, because we all go through that, right? When, I'll take my hair, for example. Like, there's some days today where it's like, oh, it looks so good. And then there's other days when it just doesn't look the same, right? And the way we speak about ourselves is, I think, kind of telling. And the way Tyler Smith is able to just be like, Yeah, well, like, I got beat on that block for sure. It's just like, dang, like, we need more of that.
Yeah, he's so self-aware.
Yeah,
he's very self-aware and self-aware about his play, and it's one of my favorite things about him. And so the things that he needs to work on that I'm sure he's aware of, like, I expect to see him get better at this year. And my hope for him is that they find a spot for him and then he can stay there and continue to grow there wherever it may be on this offensive line.
Consistency is a magical thing. I'm interested too, especially when you've got Tyron Smith. They obviously restructured that contract, so he's here for at least another season. But to me, that conversation is one of the most difficult going into the new season, is trying to figure out, do you pay the respect to the future Hall of Famer and put him back at left tackle where he's always played? Or do you cater to maybe your younger guy who's the future of that position, and you kind of use Tyron? We saw him play a little bit of right tackle. Sometimes it was really good. Sometimes it was really not good. So it'll be interesting to see how that position kind of battles out, especially going into training camp. But something that I didn't necessarily register until we started talking about it with building the board, the linebacker position right now is kind of in shambles. You've got Leighton Vander Esch back. Wow, that's important. But when you think about what comes after that, it's like, I don't know, because Anthony Barr has not been re-signed. They did just re-sign Dante Fowler, so that's a bonus. But then it's kind of like question mark. And then it popped into my head like, oh yeah, Damone Clark plays linebacker. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, Damone Clark also beat the odds and came back early. And oh yeah, he also played some meaningful snaps as well. And so that's another area where, getting to know these guys, you can kind of tell which ones are going to be on it. And that kid eats, sleeps, and breathes this game. He is so focused on being the absolute best he can be. And I just think that we are primed for a fantastic Damone Clark season.
Yeah, he looks at this. Thank you for the opportunity to actually get to talk to him. Cowboys Hour is something that everyone should be checking out, but actually being present, I had the opportunity to speak to him a little bit more. Kid. And he's a fantastic kid. But when he describing his injury and how he found out he had his injury and just how he had to shift his thinking and how it's listening to him and being someone that has a disability, it didn't seem like it really bothered him when he got injured. He was like, when he found out what was going on, because he had been playing through it.
Yeah, well, he didn't know. That was the thing about his injury, is that he told me he'd never had, a major injury that had sidelined him before ever. So then finding out literally at the combine by the Cowboys medical staff, like, hey, you've actually got an injury, and it's actually not small. For him, it was so mind-blowing that he was like,
yeah,
this can't be real. Yeah, this has never happened to me before. Not me.
And he said he kind of just put the pedal to the metal and went to work. And he just really didn't ever sound like he's not second-guessed himself or his ability to get better. And that's why when people started hearing whispers about him being able to play, I personally wasn't surprised after hearing him, because I'm just like, oh, this guy, he has that. That I don't know,
dog
just
in
that,
him.
Yeah,
he's got that dog in him.
Almost at the DMX bark.
Please.
No, I don't want to get kicked off the air.
This is a family show.
I almost did it, my bad. But yeah, I knew listening to him that he was gonna be where he needs to be, and you saw, like, linebacker is a difficult position to play.
Yeah.
But you saw the game start to come to him later in the season. And I will say, I think the 49ers game was one of his best games. I mean, he was slashing, coming down and tackling. His defensive performance at linebacker was very important to what they were able to do stopping the run. And shout out to Jonathan Hankins again, being in the middle there. But no, but yes, I agree with you. I'm so glad that you brought up linebacker, and I'm so glad you brought him up in particular, Devin Harper.
Yeah.
Devin Harper, Jabril Cox in year 3. There's some guys.
Cox, that's who I meant earlier. I think when I said Dante Fowler, I was thinking Jabril Cox.
I got you.
We're good.
Yeah, but
all the guys.
Yeah, all the guys. There are some gentlemen we're looking at for year 2 and year 3 in the linebacker room, more than almost any room. Wow.
Yeah, it's definitely a position where, to me, I think that the linebacker position is your greatest need going into the draft, because it's simply the position where you lack depth. I mean, you really do, especially when you talk about having guys who have been battle tested, having guys who are going to be able to step in and not only, make plays, but also be vocal leaders. That's what makes Leighton Vander Esch such a big draw to this defense, is that he's a communicator, he's a commander on that side. So then when you look at Leighton Vander Esch, and then you've got Damone Clark, who will likely see a lot more time this season, the drop-off there, and we've seen the rate of injuries that comes at that position because it is so physical. You need some depth there. And so I think that is a position group as well that'll be interesting to just kind of see if it plays out. Now, on the flip side of that, there are a few guys on this sophomore campaign, if you will, that I think have some questions to answer. I think that they've got some work to do as far as, expectations were here and they were here, or whatever the case. I know we've talked a little bit about Jalen Tolbert. I think he is an incredible human being. Had the opportunity to do a story with him from his Senior Bowl experience and how he knew he didn't meet expectations last year, how frustrating that was for him. He's one of the guys who's been in the backyard putting in work. Dennis Houston is a name that I just kind of, he's there, but slipped my mind. And then you mentioned earlier Simi Fehoko. Just some guys who, they coming out of the draft, they were dogs, and there were some expectations there. So when you look at maybe that group, at maybe some of the guys who weren't them last year, what's the opportunity like for these guys to be him this year?
I mean, it's just a competition of it all, right? Like, the competition at camp in some of these positions, specifically the wide receiver position, I think it's going to be tough. I think it's going to be tough, depending on if they draft wide receiver. The competition is going to keep everyone honest, and that's why you see guys working. That's why you see them doing off-season work. But then also, too, it's going to make it easier. I think it's going to make it more sure for the coaches to see, like, who is going to be the best guy to put out there. And one thing that I will say about Mike McCarthy, it don't feel like he's afraid to put the best guy that needs to be out there. Yeah. Depending on the situation, it seems like, hey, if you're the better guy for this spot, we're going to play you right now. And that's okay. And that's okay to me. But the competition in camp at linebacker, at wide receiver, at some of these positions, it's going to be somebody going to get their feelings hurt.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy, too, when you think about, because a part of me is like, okay, wide receiver 1 and 2 is locked up, right? You've got CD and Brandon Cooks. That being said, there's so much opportunity for some of these guys to step up and be surprises. I am very curious about Michael Gallup. I know gave him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt last season coming off of the ACL injury. We knew it wasn't the Michael Gallup that we were used to seeing. So I am really curious and also excited to kind of see him get back to his prime, because this will be, a contract year for him as well. He just signed that extension. So that'll be a conversation for the front office to really think about, and for him to think about too, as far as what he wants his future to be. And then pretty much after that, I kind of feel like there's a little bit of luxury there, and then you can add in a Zay Flowers or a Jalen Hyatt or a Quentin Johnston, and all of a sudden that's how Cowboys fans are going to look, just like that, eyes blinking.
Just a wide receiver core? Oh my God. Oh my God. No, but you're right. I feel like when Michael Gallup, when you talk about competition, yeah, like, he's going to compete too. Like, I'm not going to sit up here and act like, granted, like, the contract seal delivered and everything, but he's going to have to compete at that spot, Like, there's going to be, and also too, with health and staying healthy, like, there's gentlemen that are down this roster that are going to be, and if there was a rookie to come in here, there's guys that they're looking to make an uptick. I would definitely be looking for his development and how he's doing as well. With Michael Gallup. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I think he to me is, it's hard with Michael because he's obviously a veteran, and so you want to give him that veteran respect, but an ACL tear is just, it's so tricky because, I mean, like, when you look at Odell Beckham, like, when he was in his prime, like, he couldn't be stopped, and then I think he had back-to-back ACL tears, right? And, that was 3 years ago, and now he's just now getting signed to the Ravens. So injuries and stuff like that can always be scary. Are we forgetting anybody?
I have one. And because you brought up the linebacker core, and one gentleman that does not get enough credit, he is no longer here, but Luke Gifford was a guy that was really important to what they did special teams-wise. He definitely was a linebacker, but
That's a good point.
Special teams is when you talk about needing more linebacker depth, needing more like cornerback depth, whatever. A lot of those guys play on special teams as well. And so for me, Kevontae Turpin, I think, is a great player. We've gotten to know him and everything. And I mentioned this on the draft show yesterday, is the fact that a lot of the players coming out of the draft this year have return ability. You have corners that are top corners that have return ability. You have receivers that have return ability. I feel it. And you have running backs. Deuce Vaughn, our guy like from Kansas.
Love Deuce.
Yeah, Kansas State has return ability. So for him, I very much so think that there could be a gentleman that is maybe drafted or brought in here that could compete with him, that could push him to be, better at that position. I don't think it's healthy for any position to not have competition in the room. I don't. And right now, when you look around the return room, unless I'm missing something, most of the gentlemen that were on the return depth chart are now guys that are starters that you need. Tony Pollard, CeeDee Lamb, those guys. So for me, I'm looking at Kevontae Turpin also as a sophomore that needs to perform well. He did well his first year. I'm not saying that it was anything negative. I'm just saying that there needs to be a continuation of. We gave him the benefit of the doubt as well. First year, USFL. He was playing all season. Okay, full off season off. Let's get ready to rumble. We're gonna need you. Cowboys are gonna need him to flip the field for them on a consistent basis. So,
yeah. I think Kevontae too is another one of those guys where you put a question mark by him in that wide receiver ranking, because obviously that's his natural position is wide receiver, but he didn't get very many reps there. Mike McCarthy has talked about getting him involved, not getting him involved. Kevontae talked about wanting to be more involved in that area. So that's definitely an interesting point to bring out. Well, let's go ahead and take our second and final break. Guys, we want to take some phone calls from you. We're going to do that after the break. The phone number here is 888-855-2297. Again, 888-855-2297. We're going to get to some of your calls when we come back on Girls Talk Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw.
At Jigsaw Dating, we obviously want the Cowboys to bring that sixth ring home. But to be honest, we're more focused on finding the person who will put a ring on your finger. That's why we created a dating app that reveals your face through meaningful conversation, so you can date deeper. Because it's personality that matters the most, not looks. Join Jigsaw Dating today, dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
All right, Pepsi-loving football fans, it's time we had a lesson in trash talk. And I'm not talking about that stuff that happens on the field. What I'm talking about is trash, and it's the only thing that belongs in your garbage can. Now, recycling might not be as thrilling as converting a 4th and long, but next time you're thinking about throwing that Pepsi Zero Sugar bottle away, just cap it back up and pretend you're down by 6 with the recycling bin wide open. Know the difference? Make a difference. Be a team player and recycle. Visit PepsiTrashTalk.com to learn more.
With Smoothie King's original Angel Food and new Angel Food Slim without added sugar, you no longer have to choose between treating yourself and hitting your goals this summer. You don't have to choose between great taste and feeling great. Because at Smoothie King, every blend is made with whole fruits and no syrups, so you can satisfy your cravings without compromise. The only choice you will need to make is which one is best for you. Try our classic Angel Food or the new Angel Food Slim, blended without added sugar. Smoothie King, rule the day.
Welcome back to Girls Talk Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw, the preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys. The official 2023 Dallas Cowboys Star Magazine, this one right here, guys, is Star Magazine NFL Draft Guide is now available. This year's edition features more scouting reports than ever and over 500 prospects listed in all. There's also features on the passion for football in Texas, the annual mock draft, and the science of selecting a running back in the first round. Who do we think wrote that? Do your Cowboys draft with the Cowboys. Get your draft guide today at DallasCowboys.com/star. I will say about this magazine, I'm going to brag a little bit on my coworkers. Y'all, this is an incredible piece of content that you can have if you're obsessed with the draft or just the Cowboys in general, or just kind of want to get a little bit more well-versed on what the draft looks like, which positions are important for the Cowboys, and how the process works. Kyle literally spent hours working on this to get it done. It's so well written. Patrick's got an article in there, a lot of history in there. So I can't brag enough about my coworkers, but this type of stuff is really cool to see it come to fruition in the flesh. Aisha, I'm so excited. You saw my face light up. We officially have our first ever caller here on Girls Talk, Boys Talk. I believe his name is Antoine from North Carolina. Antoine, you are our first caller on Girls Talk, Boys Talk.
Oh, that is great. That's awesome. You know, I've been listening to your shows. I appreciate it. I love females and women that are into football that know what they're talking about. I love it. I try to make my daughters the same way.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
My question to you guys are there any players that you think are not being talked about or overlooked that we could possibly look into drafting? Like, I'm a big fan of Jared Patterson, interior lineman from Notre Dame. He has a lot of position flex. I just like his game. I think he's someone that could be one of those linemen where he could come in and become a long-term starter, 10, 12-year starter.
Well, I have to take a look. Can you say the gentleman's name for me one more time?
Jared Patterson, Notre Dame interior lineman.
Okay, I'll check him out. I'll have to look at him or talk to the guys about him on the draft show. But I will say, you asked, is there a player? I can say a position that I think is not getting no love, like safety, my friends.
Yeah, that too.
Safety, my friends. Like, safety has not gotten no love. It sounds like you're a little familiar with the draft, so you understand that safety is kind of...
I'm a big off-season guy.
Okay, dope. So it's a little thin right now at safety, and when you look at this draft, but there are some guys. I feel like with the Cowboys safety room, though, you do have Jaron Kearse. You do have Malik Hooker, I think, for another year. Dono, also, you've definitely locked in. But after that, there's still, like, who's your backup free? Are there any safeties that you think are interesting, that you're interested in possibly the Cowboys drafting?
Yeah, I would say along that same lines, corner as well is a spot where I know we've talked about it, but the specifics of it, especially with Stephon coming in, it's been I think that's a position that I think needs to be talked about a little bit more, and seeing, a guy like take Nishan Wright, for example, a guy who's really trying to prove himself and prove that he belongs on a roster. But his biggest strength, I think, is his ability to be versatile. Israel Mukuamu is that same way. So looking at guys who can kind of fit that same mold so that Dan Quinn can kind of, get his hands on them and morph them into the Cowboys defenders that we know today.
Yeah. I wanted to hear Antoine's thought about the corner or safety position.
Well, yeah, that's another position that, like you said, hasn't been talked about or given enough look into, because I believe we do have Jaron and Malik Hooker for one year deals, if I'm not correct.
Yes, you're correct.
I'm a fan of Jordan Battle.
Love Jordan Battle. Roll Tide, baby. Love Jordan.
I think he's a good player. I think he can play down in the box, but can also cover deep. So I'm a big fan of Jordan Battle. I think safety is another position we definitely should draft or take a look into drafting if we can find one in the right spot for the right value. Definitely.
No, yeah, I agree. I think that Battle, I think, if I'm not mistaken, after Branch, he might be people's number 2 safety. So, yeah, you're 100% correct. There are a couple positions that I think people are looking over, and safety is one of them. So I'm gonna look into Patterson, and you can tweet at me or whatever, and I'll look into him for you. Okay.
Antoine, thank you so much for being our first ever caller. We will never forget you.
I appreciate it, and that warms my heart to know that I'm the very first caller for Girls Talk, Boys Talk.
Thank you so much. We, believe it or not, Aisha, we have another call.
Look.
This one's coming from Kai out of Rochester, New York. Kai, You are on Girls Talk, Boys Talk. You are our second caller on the pod. Welcome.
Yay for second. I'm a little jealous of Antoine right now. I'm just going to say that.
I will let you know, Kai, when Jazz, our producer, said that we have another caller. I don't know if you have the live stream up, but my face lit up. This is so exciting for us. So don't feel sad being number 2.
I'm over it already. I'm okay. Hey, I'm going to say I love your show. And Aisha, I don't know if you know this, but I am a fan of yours. You're just doing such a great job. I watched you on the Draft Show. I love to hear your opinions and everything. I'm a big fan. So keep up the great work.
Join the club. Aisha's a stud, guys. She's a stud.
Thank you.
So my questions, just some comments first. The safety out of Alabama, Branch, you guys were just talking about. I think that guy's next level. I know he's the only safety that is probably a first-round pick, but watch that. I've watched that guy, also an Alabama fan. Watched him for years. That guy is next level type stuff. I think he's going to be amazing. Battle, I don't think has been the same since he got hurt a few years ago. I don't think he's gotten back to 100%, but he's another good player though. But my question is about, and I hope you guys were talking about linebacker. I'm interested in the linebacker out of Oregon, Noah Sewell.
Penne's brother.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and how I envision it, maybe a third-round pick if we might have to sneak up or if he falls to us. But I see him opposite Parsons with a little bit of the dog that's in that guy. What do you guys think of Noah Sewell and as a third-round pick? And again, congratulations on a great show.
Okay, thank you so much. I actually do have him in the third round. Now that you ask, and I think Noah has some range to him. I like him better coming downhill. I feel like he'll fit into most traditional, linebacking situations. I think he can fit. I think he can play a little bit of will, but my only concern for him is that sometimes the angles aren't great. Sometimes the tackling isn't great. Sometimes the motor for me isn't always there. So I feel like with some coaching, he can definitely, or wherever he fits, he can definitely fit in and be okay there. But I like his range. I like his tenacity, and from my understanding, he's very easy to coach.
Yeah, that's
from
what
my
I was gonna
understanding.
say.
Yeah, from my understanding, he's very easy to coach. He just has some of the normal linebacker stuff he has to work on, but more than anything, I'm looking at him to progress more as a tackler, as a sound tackler. But I definitely have him in the third round, and I wouldn't be upset with them taking him.
Yeah, I think the big thing with this Cowboys team, specifically the defensive side of the ball, is that they love versatility. I kind of just talked about that, like with Nishan and Israel, but really anywhere on the field, they love versatility. Think about Micah Parsons, and technically was drafted as a linebacker, and now we rarely see him line up in that way. It's something you have to remember about Noah, too, that I actually just reminded myself of. He used to play quarterback. So making the switch from being the quarterback of the team to being the quarterback of the defense, so to speak, I think that's a quality that is really attractive to this front office, really attractive to scouts, because you know that the football IQ is going to be there as well. So then you match the physicality, the ability to kind of come in the way Damone Clark did and learn under some of these guys, and then you have the football IQ to go with it. I think that is a really important aspect to a lot of these guys that Will McClay kind of alluded to when we spoke to him at the Combine. It's not just about, what they can do physically, but who are they as people? Who are they off of the field? What's their football IQ like? So I think that's a really strong quality that Noah has as well.
That's a good point. Did we answer your question? My bad.
No, you did great. You did great. No, I really appreciate it. And again, congratulations on a great show. And again, Aisha, I'm a big fan.
Thank you so much,
support,
Kai.
Man.
We have got time for one more call. I believe we've got Steven from L.A. Did I get that right? Steven from L.A.? Atlanta, ATL, not L.A. What's up, Steven in Atlanta? Couldn't have got that more wrong.
Hey, good morning. Good morning. How y'all doing?
We are so good. Thank you so much, Steven.
Good. So, well, first, great show, y'all. I'm glad to be amongst the first callers. Not the
Thank
first,
you.
But glad to be amongst the first. And y'all are both great. Aisha, you got me calling people gentlemen that probably aren't even close to being gentlemen, but I use the word so much from listening to you, so I can appreciate that. I sound better saying that. My question is, and kind of piggybacking on the other callers, actually, to a certain degree, I've had a concern with the middle of the Cowboys defense as far as depth is concerned.
Sure.
With Hankins, LVE, and Malik Hooker. And those three guys, solid starters. But how would you all rate the quality of the depth behind each of those guys should one of them get hurt or injured for a significant period? Like me, I'm, kind of piggyback, just kind of segueing from some of the other callers. Mm-hmm. I'm really concerned about what we have at free safety behind Hooker, just having that true center fielder type player, because while we've got a solid safety group, I don't think Wilson or Curse really could fill that role, should something happen to Hooker. And Hooker, we've been fortunate that he hasn't really had much in the way of injuries since he's been with us, but, he had a real serious injury history when he got here, which is how we were able to get him so cheap. But just what do you all think about the depth between, behind those three guys in the middle, Hankins, LVE, and Hooker?
Oh, yeah. Well, no, first of all, fantastic question, because we were just talking about that. But free safety, man, you're right. You're right, man. Like, free safety after Malik Hooker is who is the person. And I said this the other day. I feel like Israel Mukuamu really made things kind of weird because he was
the Washington game. You were like, oh,
yeah,
what up, Izzy?
Yeah, because Israel Mukuamu, if I'm not mistaken, was kind of the guy that they were trying to bring in as that free safety or that hybrid guy. But from what he showed at corner, it's very difficult to deny that is very natural for him. So, and even talk about Malik Hooker, it looked like, he had a off-season procedure done on his thumb. He had that big club he played. He played through having something going on with his thumb all season. I wonder if the depth had anything to do with that. But to your point, I feel like free safety is something that absolutely has to be addressed depth-wise for his sake, for Malik Hooker's sake, and just to keep the Cowboys honest at that position. When you move down to linebacker, we were just talking about it earlier. When you look at it's Micah might make things a little different too. Yeah. I was actually thinking about that when you mentioned linebacker. I wonder if we will see Micah play a little bit more linebacker again, because that's something I've heard him in a couple of offseason interviews mention, that he wants to get back to some of that ambiguity, kind of, rushing from the middle, whatever. And if that's the case, then maybe you have a Leighton, a Micah Parsons, and a Damone Clark. You maybe feel a little bit better. But you're right. We just talked about it. The depth there is... you have Jabril Cox, you have Devin Harper, and both of these gentlemen, for all intent and purposes, are not proven yet at that position. So linebacker is somewhere that I definitely feel like is necessary. Like you said, is somewhat of a need depth-wise. And when you get down to DT, losing, I don't care what nobody say, losing Carlos Watkins felt huge because he stepped in at that DT position last year when Quentin Bohanna was out and Neville Gallimore was dealing with some things at some point in time in the season, and he really manned that position. So DT, from conversation with the guys on the draft show as well, seems like almost a necessity in this draft as well. So you're on the money when you're talking about what's happening depth-wise. Haley?
Yeah, I just think you can't have enough depth for those guys in the middle of the field, especially when you talk about this is a team that has struggled to stop the run, not just last year, but years prior as well. I think Jonathan Hankins helps, but you've got to be able to have some depth in there. We spoke yesterday about Neville Gallimore and Quentin Bohanna, and these are guys who were on and off of the inactive list, and you can't have that when you're trying to have, a doomsday-like defense like we've seen in so many years past. So I don't think there's anything wrong with shoring up the defensive interior of the field. Very similar to corner and safety in that regard. You can never have too many bodies because you never know when you're going to lose an Anthony Brown or when you're going to lose, somebody important, and you want to be able to have someone who's going to be able to seamlessly kind of fit in. So I definitely think that's a big topic of concern, and I imagine the front office is having these same conversations as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think the hooker situation, I think, as far as depth is concerned, I think, we want to definitely have an eye on 23, but also we don't want to find ourselves with a glaring need there with 24 coming up in 2024, because I think this is the last year of his contract, and there just isn't anything behind him. I don't know. I think Bell's more of a box safety. I don't know if he's Marquise Bell. I don't know if he's, a free safety type, or if he's more of a box safety. But, there's just nothing else there. So hopefully, we can get that addressed. Those Alabama guys that have been mentioned, Mike Branch, maybe he can, maybe be a guy. I don't know where he's targeted to go, but if we're able to get somebody like him, then I think that shores us up depth-wise and also going forward. So, but I appreciate y'all. That was great. I appreciate y'all.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Steven. We appreciate you so much. And the good news is all of these questions will be answered in 2 weeks at the NFL Draft.
Boom, boom, pow.
Aisha, this has been so fun. We officially have our first callers. What a good show. The NFL Draft is creeping up close. That'll do it, though, for this extended edition of Girls Talk, Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw. For Aisha Morrison, I'm Haley Sutton, and we will talk to you guys next week.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys?